I have a question for you. When was the last time you really learned a new skill? I mean, practiced it and actually achieved mastery.
That's a tough one.
Okay, what if that skill was reading? For most of us, the answer is probably grade school. Is reading just about knowing words, or is it a craft that most of us, well, stopped practicing the minute we left a classroom?
That's a really provocative idea. And it's the exact premise of the book we're about to get into. We're talking
Yeah.
about this paradox where, yeah, we can all read, but very few of us actually read well.
Absolutely. So welcome to this deep dive. We've designed this for you, the intellectually curious learner. Enjoy a bold new take on book coverage with this extended analysis. It's more than just a summary, which we do include. This feature really examines how an author shapes their argument, how they build influence, and how they earn or maybe lose your trust.
And that gives you the tools to read with much sharper insight.
Right. It should help you decide, should you read this book? It's also, I think, excellent for aspiring writers.
So we're focusing on Mortimer Adler and Charles Van Doren's huge work, How to Read a Book. It gets called a self-help guide, but its core purpose is intensely instructional. It's really a didactic guide that treats reading not as some passive hobby, but as a trainable intellectual craft.
The craft, I like that. Adler was a philosopher deeply into the great books movement, and you can tell he was just incredibly frustrated. He saw people drowning in information but completely starved of actual understanding.
His whole mission was to fix that, to correct what he saw as this wave of superficial reading. He wanted to guide readers toward disciplined methods so they could truly read for understanding and ultimately read to master the really difficult works, the classics.
He's basically asking you to treat the author like a teacher you can argue with.
Exactly.
And just a quick note as we dig into this, you are experiencing a unique two-host AI conversation powered by Google's Notebook LM, which allows for a deeper, more dynamic book analysis.
Okay, let's start with the foundations. The tone of this book is the first thing that hits you.
It really is. It's not soft or encouraging in a modern self-help way. I'd call it firm, it's patient, but it's also got this serious, high-minded, tough love feel to it.
And that toughness is completely intentional. It's central to his strategy. In Adler's world, reading is never, ever passive. He frames it again and again as strenuous, active labor.
He's taking a shot at how we consume media, isn't he?
Oh, absolutely. He's criticizing that rapid, shallow consumption of print. It's demanding, yes, but he packages that demand as a sort of compliment. He's telling you that you are capable of doing this hard work.
And he builds the whole argument on this really clear framework, the 4 cumulative levels of reading. It's the roadmap. It makes mastery seem achievable not just for geniuses.
Right. Level number 1 is elementary reading. That's just basic literacy. Decoding sentences, understanding what the words mean. Most adults are comfortable there, but that's where they stop.
They stall out. And then level 2 is inspectional reading.
Which is basically pre-reading or skimming.
Yeah, it's about quickly figuring out the book's architecture. What's the structure? What are the key arguments? You're basically trying to decide if the book is worth your time before you really commit.
Then you get to the core of the whole thing. Level number 3, analytical reading. This is the goal. This is deep, active engagement. It's not about just absorbing the text. It's about dissecting it.
This is where he spends the most time, gives the most rules.
Because it takes the most effort. It's like if elementary reading is learning to drive, analytical reading is learning how to rebuild the engine.
That's a great way to put it. You're forced to answer 4 big questions. What's the book about as a whole? What's being said in detail and how? Is it actually true? And finally, so what? What's the relevance?
And that latter leads to the very top, level number 4, syntopical reading. This is basically comparative scholarship.
So reading multiple books on the same subject and creating your own take.
Exactly. You're understanding how different authors' arguments relate to each other, and then you synthesize your own unique insight. You're joining the conversation.
The genius of this structure, rhetorically, is that it just demystifies serious reading. By mapping it out, he assures you that it's disciplined effort, not some innate gift. That's the key.
So now let's shift into how that structure actually works as persuasion. Adler doesn't just give you tips. He's handing you a full methodology.
Right. And the book fits perfectly into what you'd expect from practical nonfiction. Clear frameworks, explicit steps, rules you can apply. But he pushes it further with all of these subdivisions and detailed rules. He's positioning himself not just as a teacher, but as a methodical technician of reading.
That organizational logic is so crucial for building his ethos, his credibility. His whole persona is the scholar reformer.
The scholar reformer, how does he build that credibility? Is it just his connection to the great books movement?
That's a huge part of it, yeah.
Yeah.
He constantly points you toward the great authors and the classics as the highest possible object of reading. So his method gets linked to all that intellectual weight and cultural tradition.
But he's also appealing to people who feel like their education failed them.
Precisely. He's essentially saying, your school taught you the alphabet, but it didn't give you the tools to handle real intellectual weight. He's the solution to that failure.
So he's the guy who fixes what school broke.
And by codifying reading this way, he's tapping into the reader's desire for seriousness, for cultural capital. He's inviting you to join this big centuries-long conversation, and his technique is the secret handshake to get in.
But hold on, doesn't that create a huge bias? I mean, if the whole system is built to read Aristotle, isn't the method just a form of literary gatekeeping? It ignores so many other fields.
That is the essential limitation, and we'll get to that. But for his argument, rhetorically, it works. He appeals to this high ideal of understanding fundamental truths. He suggests that if you can master the great original discoverers, you can handle anything.
So the appeal to tradition is designed to make you think this is the only way.
Exactly. The most direct path to real understanding.
Okay, we will definitely come back to that cultural narrowness. But for those of you who appreciate this kind of critique, we recommend checking out Mindful Moments. It's our YouTube channel offering AI book analysis, summaries, and critiques. It's all about inspiring reflection and rational thought.
All right, let's look at the engine of this argument. The whole book is really an extended logical proof. It's defining good reading by the quality of understanding you achieve. So logos, or logical appeal, is absolutely the dominant force here.
And the strategy is just beautifully systematic. Number one, he defines the distinct reading levels. Number two, he argues that most people are stuck on the low levels. And number three, he presents this battery of rules that logically lead to a higher understanding, but only if you apply them.
It's not enough to just say read actively. He actually models repeatable reasoning for you. The most critical part is that four-part procedure he lays out for analytical reading. It makes the whole abstract process really concrete.
Those four procedures are the main takeaway, aren't they? The tools you can actually use.
For sure. The first couple of rules are about structure. You have to classify the book, then state its unity, its main point, in just a sentence or two. Then the next rules are about interpretation.
This is where you have to, as he says, come to terms with the author.
Right, by identifying their keywords and reconstructing their main arguments. He insists you cannot critique an author until you can state their argument fairly, in your own words.
That one rule changes everything. It shifts you from being a passive receiver to an active participant who is rebuilding the author's logic.
And this is where the logos is just so powerful. These ordered lists classify, state the point, outline the parts, reconstruct the arguments. It's a transferable reasoning procedure. He's not asking you to magically understand. He's saying, here are the steps, apply them to any hard text.
It sounds incredibly demanding, though. Is there any emotional relief in the book? I mean, for a text that's so systematic, is there any pathos, any emotional appeal to keep you from just giving up?
Yes. It's very understated, but it's absolutely there, and it's necessary. The pathos works by tapping into both your intellectual insecurity and your aspiration.
The feeling that you ought to be getting more out of serious books.
Exactly. That vague discomfort. Adler puts a name to it and then offers this rigorous, dignified solution. He's basically giving you permission to be smart, but only if you do the work.
So by insisting reading is active labor, not just some leisure activity, he flatters your effort.
Right. He's telling you this mental work is hard, but you are capable of it. And the reward is genuine intellectual freedom.
And the metaphors he uses, like reading as a conversation or an intellectual sport, those seem designed to reduce the anxiety of tackling someone like Kant or Plato.
They absolutely are. They humanize the whole program and make the difficulty feel more like a worthwhile challenge.
Okay, so let's get into the specific strategies that make the reader internalize all this.
The ones that really ensure you adopt this new identity as an active reader.
The first one that stands out is the constant direct address. He uses imperative sentences commands all the time. Classify the book, come to terms with the author. It turns advice into direct, actionable instructions.
And it keeps you in that role of a student focused on the task. Then there's what I'd call the refrain.
The recurring questions.
Yes, those four questions we mentioned earlier. What is the book about? What is being said in detail? Is it true? So what? They act like a constant mental drill. That's the core toolkit he wants you to internalize so it becomes automatic when you pick up a serious book.
And finally, he uses contrast everywhere to sharpen his points. It's always passive versus active reading or information versus understanding.
That's a very persuasive move because it forces you, the reader, to identify with the more rigorous, ambitious side of that equation. You implicitly choose to be the active, deep reader or risk staying on the surface. It's an exercise in forming an intellectual identity.
So when we evaluate its effectiveness, for its intended audience of motivated readers, it's a massive success. It gives you the vocabulary, the procedure, and that firm tone builds real confidence.
It succeeds because it demystifies what many people see as an elite skill. But, and this is the crucial limitation, there's the alienation factor, the cultural narrowness.
You mean the sheer density of the rules and the heavy, heavy bias toward the great books of the Western canon?
Yes. It reveals a really significant curricular narrowness. If your intellectual passion is, say, modern genre fiction or technical journals or non-Western philosophy, this book might feel, well, exclusionary.
The examples are almost all from classic philosophy and literature.
And that can be alienating. A reader wanting to master cutting-edge science might question the relevance. So while the methodology, the critical dissection, is universal, the context and the assumed best materials are very limited by Adler's 20th century humanist worldview.
It's a powerful toolkit for a very specific intellectual job.
Exactly. The real lesson, the one you have to update for yourself, is that you must see the author not as an infallible authority, but as a person whose arguments you are required to take apart and analyze. Just that shift in attitude is worth the price of the book.
So what's the final takeaway for you, the learner? The incredible influence of how to read a book comes from its masterful blend of rigorous logos, a powerful reformer ethos, and a subtle but potent pathos that appeals to our intellectual aspirations. It really did become the template for almost every intellectual self-help guide that followed.
The challenge Adler leaves you with isn't really about memorizing rules. It's about adopting a mindset that reading is a deliberate, strenuous effort. The question is, are you just gathering information, which any computer can do, or are you doing the strenuous work to achieve mastery and join that long intellectual conversation?
Are you just skimming, or are you truly trying to understand?
That's the challenge.
Click the link on screen for the in-depth book summary. Subscribe, share, purchase via link, and think rationally.
Click the link on screen for the in-depth book summary. Subscribe, share, purchase via link, and think rationally.
See the many genre-based book podcasts at Mindful Moments. Subscribe and nourish your mind on the go.